Every year, thousands of people are reported missing. 95% are found, but some remain simply missing. My name is Neil Portman, and this is Andi, and we are covering the case of Nevaeh Kingbird.
Nevaeh Kingbird was born August 26th of 2006, and at the time of her disappearance on October 22nd, 2021, she was 15 years old, 5 feet 4 inches, 120 pounds, and last seen wearing a black zip-up hoodie or a red sweatshirt with a logo of a bull, wearing a headdress, jeans, and black Nike slide sandals. She was born in Bemidji and lived there her whole life. She went missing after her mom came home and found her and some other friends drinking at her house, partying, and her mom came home after hearing Naveah kind of slurring her speech on the phone, and she just wanted to check and make sure she was okay. She did have some sort of bipolar disorder from what we've been able to find, and she had run away before and always stayed in touch. Her mom got a call from her where she was slurring her speech, so her mom left work at the casino she worked at to go home and check on her, where some people barricaded the door and didn't want to let her in, at which point she called the police and had them come and kick everybody out. That was the point that Naveah left out the back door with her cousin. Yes, Naveah goes out the back door with her cousin. Then in the morning, like midnight, she's at a new party with her cousin, and they leave around 1 a.m. and go to her guy friend's house around 2 a.m. when his stepdad knocks on the door and tells them that they have to leave, pretty much, and she jumps out the window of his house, and it's believed that she like hit her head, because they said that she laid on the ground for a second and then she took off and disappeared. There were a few reported sightings of her in the residential areas of Washington Ave Southwest and Pine Grove Street Southwest that reported a young female around 3:30 to 4 a.m. on October 22nd, which was the morning that she was not seen again. But that's not been like confirmed that it was her. It's just a possibility. Then Teddy is her mom, and the kids catch COVID or test positive for COVID, and Nevaeh's social media goes completely silent, and there's no communication from her, which in the past when she had run away, she would always stay in communication, or she would be posting updates on social media, and none of that happened. But that may be because the police find her phone in between the bed and the wall of the window she jumped out of. The window's up at the top and the bed's up against it, and her phone's down in between them, which is at the second house she was at in Southview Terrace Park. And then there was another couple that believed that she may have knocked on their door, but she got scared off and ran away. And then the next morning when they went outside, they saw that their garage had a broken window, and they thought maybe she was seeking shelter, but she wasn't there. It was below freezing that night, so it would make sense that she was trying to seek shelter, but no one really knows if she was successful in that. Later, they were looking in the like kind of swampy area around there and found some pants and a sweater that belonged to a family member of hers that she may have had, but nothing else of hers was around there. And they've done dives in that area. They've done lots of ground searches around that area as well, but haven't found any other signs that she was around there, and she hasn't been seen since October 22nd of 2021.
Yeah, just reference, Bemidji is in Minnesota, basically west and north of Minneapolis. So not quite the lakes, but out in the countryside, western north Minnesota. With the reference of the area that she went missing, I don't know if you mentioned she's Native American. There was another Native American boy that went missing in 2016. His name was Jeremy Jourdain. Under similar circumstances, he was at a party with his friends, and almost looks like maybe some of his family members were there.
Yeah, at least his sister was there because she lived in Bemidji closer to the party, and he lived in Cass Lake, which was like 16 miles from Bemidji about. And he lived with his grandpa, so his friend picked him up and brought him to the party where he met his sister there. And then there's been a few different reports saying that family members tried to help look for him, but it's unknown if it was that the same night of the party when he went missing or if it was like the following day. But he had gone outside to smoke some cigarettes with his friends and apparently just said, "I'm out of here."
I heard he had got a phone call.
I've seen different reports about if he was just looking at his phone or if he just left, so I wasn't sure which one it is. His sister said that she thinks, or what she heard from the other people at the party, was that he saw something on his phone and left when they were outside, but there was no explanation or no reason, nothing for why he would run off from the party that he was like planning to be at for a long time. His family didn't hear from him, and they all gathered at his grandpa's house, which was in Cass Lake, at which point they called the cops the following morning at 9 a.m. because it wasn't till the following day that they realized that he hadn't come home and that nobody had heard from him.
These dogs, which traced to East 6th Street and Wood Avenue, and then they lost the scent. Theory is that somebody picked him up or he got in a car, which is like the same thing with Maura Murray. She went a couple of blocks and then the dogs lost the scent.
Some people have asked if maybe he tried to walk home or run home or something to get back to Cass Lake.
That's 16 miles.
Yeah, it was really far away, and his sister said that she didn't think that he would ever try to do that. But other things that are important to note is that he was a homebody and loved being at home and otherwise loved playing basketball, and he wanted to play basketball in college, so like he was a pretty motivated person, it sounded like, and that he had never tried to run away or anything like that. Even now, the police and anybody investigating the case believe that he wasn't a runaway, but that something actually happened that night. Important to note too is even though this was in October of 2016, they still have like active searches planned for going out and doing like walking a grid basically to see what they can find maybe of his.
Yeah, it's coming up this month, the 30th. So they're still actively looking for him. I think that can't quite be said of Naveah. She did have a tendency to run away at times, but she always seemed to come back, and she also seemed to really love her family, especially her younger siblings, and like to come home eventually. So the fact that they never heard anything from her is odd.
Yes, she was 15 at the time of her disappearance. I know from the time I got like my first cell phone when I was like 13, it has been attached to my hip. I just thinking about what kind of headspace would she have been in if when she jumped out of this window and maybe got concussed or something, but when her phone wasn't on her anymore, what she would try to do, because I would probably try to go home or try to go back to the house or do something to get in contact with someone about not having it, unless she did get a concussion and mixed things around for her. I feel like teenagers are pretty well known to be attached to their cell phones, and realizing you don't have it would be a big deal, especially in the middle of the night.
I think anybody now, I won't mention the town, but I was taking a bus and I was reading a book and missed my stop. And I looked up and I was way away from where I was supposed to be, and I needed my phone. That was my first resource. Go to the app and find out whether the bus is going to take me where I want to go. So once it's gone, we're so used to it now that having that resource not having contact with your family. There was a day when that was people didn't have those, but now it's even me. I mean, I grew up in that generation where we didn't have cell phones. I still don't want to be without mine. I'm freaked out if I don't have it.
Yeah, I know. I'm very attached to my phone and making sure that it's charged and that I have it on me just in case of emergency or even just to take pictures of cute animals I see. It's always on me, and especially for how much communication she liked to be in with her family and how close they were with her, and the fact that even if she did run away, she always came back and they would be able to keep in contact with her. And the fact that she didn't have it, none of her social media accounts have been active, nothing. As far as they can tell, she hasn't logged in to anything from like a computer or something like that, as she was still trying to get in contact with them.
I'm surprised she didn't go back for it. That maybe she was too afraid that at the second party she was at, the dad had knocked on the door and wanted him to leave. And so maybe she was too afraid to go get it, but it seems like if it was me, I'd try to go back and get my phone.
Yeah, that's maybe she didn't realize it was missing until too late. It sounds like it just fell down there and nobody realized it was there for a few days, I think. But it's the whole thing is just weird. Like a weird sequence of events that ended up with her never being seen again after that night.
I wonder what would happen if she did have her phone. That probably would have at least maybe had a chance to call somebody. It's interesting that she tried to break in. It's too bad she didn't stop and ask for help. I wonder if that was her, what spooked her from not getting that family to come to the door.
I didn't write down what time in the morning that was.
That wasn't about the 3:30 time. Oh, it was after that. But either way, Minnesota in October, it's usually pretty cold. Anybody who's been to Minneapolis in the winter understands what it's. And it was the 30s. It can get a lot colder there, and you can get hypothermic pretty quick if you're not well dressed.
That was one of the theories I saw about what could have happened to her was if she got hypothermia, that could explain why they found some of her clothing items in the swamp, because you get super, super cold and then you get hot because
Paradoxical undressing. When the muscles in the outer part of your body tire out and just let all that blood from the core flood out, and then you think you're warm, start taking your clothes off. But I also wonder if she was staying the night, if that was a change of clothes. She supposedly was wearing that hoodie. Some people say it was black and blue jeans. And then she has those clothes. Was that a change of clothes for the next day? Or I guess she was at the other house too. Maybe she did put them on. I don't know. It's hard to say.
That's, I guess, also with the paradoxical undressing, like you were just talking about. I feel like they would have found more clothing items than just the two. She had like socks and shoes
And usually that's really close to the end. Once that happens and you like get undressed and you usually freeze pretty quickly. You just fall asleep and then don't wake up. So you think her body would still be there, but
I feel like if she is dead somewhere, that it'd have to be somewhere far away from where they've done all of their searches, because they have done quite a few searches using all sorts of different technologies to try to find anything they can, and they haven't found really anything new since 2021 with the initial kind of investigations. If she was there and if she had wandered off into the woods and died, I feel like they would have found more evidence of that by this point in time. They haven't, so it makes me wonder if she did get picked up by somebody and maybe they dumped the clothes in the swamp and anything they thought would be more identifiable to her and then took her somewhere, or were getting rid of evidence after something happened. But it's just odd.
yep. I think being cold, it seemed like the body would have lasted. The animals are obviously going to scavenge it. Insects definitely not as active in the winter. We're looking pretty close. If she was, it wouldn't have been like an hour. So it would have been probably at least a week or two before her body was gone. Usually the animals don't eat the bones. Jeremy was also Native American. So we have an epidemic in this town, it seems like, of missing Native kids or just natives in general going missing.
Yeah, that's through our research about these two cases, we found a lot of incidents of human trafficking in Minnesota, including one sting operation that was in June of 2021. So that would have been a few months before Naveah went missing. And they had two men from Bemidji of six that were arrested in this sting operation. And
Yeah, Michael Lee Eichstad, 56, of Bemidji, and Quint Kyle Iron Necklace, 24, both from Bemidji. That's interesting and frightening at the same time.
back in 2019, which was 3 years ish after Jeremy went missing, there was a trafficking sting in St. Paul where 47 men were arrested and they saved 28 victims from being trafficked, including one of them that was a minor. And then in 2023, which we're jumping around here a little bit, but they had another human trafficking sting in St. Paul, and 11 men were arrested with 4 victims saved. So it seems like there's a lot of human trafficking in this area, and I haven't read anything that points in that direction for both of these cases, but just from reading more about it and learning about the two people involved in human trafficking that were from Bemidji, it feels very likely that Jeremy was picked up by someone, maybe for the intent of trafficking, but at least someone was involved in his disappearance. For Naveah, I could definitely see that being something that happened to her as well. And that maybe she had, like with her losing her phone, maybe somebody pulls over and says, hey, can you help me? Or do you need a ride somewhere? Because it's the middle of the night and it's freezing. But I do feel like it's important to note too that her mom had her in like self-defense classes from like for a while, so she knew how to defend herself. So I feel like it's not like a just grab someone off the street thing, but I feel like there has to have been something that like she wasn't able to defend herself against, whether that was like the weather conditions and it being super cold, or if it was just somebody that she thought she could trust that got her in a car. And then it's a lot harder to fight someone who's driving a car and get out of it.
And the article I read, she laid on the ground after she fell out the window for quite a while. Makes you wonder if she had a concussion, which could have put her at jeopardy. Isn't that how Liam Neeson's wife died, right? She hit her head. You can have brain swelling and stuff if you hit your head hard enough. Mm-hmm. And that could have incapacitated her, possibly, and made her so she couldn't defend herself. Jordan, on the other hand, this is a big kid. He's 6'4", 170 pounds. He seems like he wouldn't be so easy to subdue. But I guess if you have a gun, then, or some other...
Yeah, that's the thing with him maybe getting a phone call or seeing something on his phone makes me wonder if the spot where the dogs lost the scent of him was maybe like a predetermined meeting location for that night or something. Because I feel like that would be why he maybe went that direction. Because I can't imagine him trying to just walk home because of how long it is or how long the walk would be, especially with, like, it seems like he has a very good relationship with his family, and he lives with his, or he used to live with his grandpa, and his aunt was very involved in his case once he went missing. So it seems like he wouldn't be trying to get away from them, or if something had happened that he would get support from his sister. If he wanted to go home, then he would be able to tell them that he wanted to go home without it being a big deal. So that just seems really weird, and that maybe he had made a new friend that he hadn't talked about yet or something, where somebody was like, hey, come meet me at this address, and that's why he took off so quickly.
Yeah, because he was only 17, so he's still pretty young. Mm-hmm. In Naveah's case, I wonder why she was running. I mean, her mom described herself as strict because she didn't want somebody to take advantage of Naveah. Is she afraid of her, like, kind of getting punished by her mom? Why? Because she leaves a party and then she goes to another party, and then when that breaks up, then she runs. So I wonder what she's running from. Just being punished for her mom?
Yeah, I don't have as much experience with people with bipolar disorder too. I'm not sure if she had if that could be a contributing factor in her disappearance, especially with a possibly very significant head injury. Maybe something related to that, or maybe she thought she was running in the direction of her house because of her concussion and then something else happened, or that her friends were with her or something, and you turn around and everybody's gone and you don't know where you are.
You don't have your phone. And I think I had read that she was more prone to run when she had her manic episodes. So when she was on the depressive side of it, then she would tend to be more home. But when she had the mania side, that's when she would be running. And we never did see if she was on medication or not. And I know alcohol is probably not a good thing to be mixing with those medications.
Oh, a big part of background that we have not talked about up to this point is that she had two friends, and her best friend committed suicide in April of 2021, and then another one of her friends died a week before Naveah went missing, which, based on what we read about her kind of sticking around home more when she was in her more depressive states, then that would point more towards her being home. And I feel like relying on her family for a lot of support during that time, probably. But she wanted to go to college in Colorado. She had a plan in life, so it's not like she was looking to run away or escape her life. She had a pretty good relationship with her family. She had friends. She was going to these parties. It doesn't seem like she would have left her phone at the kid's house intentionally to go try to end her life or something else like that. It doesn't seem like there was a plan that night for her. It seemed like it was all very one thing after another, just funneled her to disappearing.
I also wonder if, since she may have been depressed, she was drinking, and now her mom calls the police that she's underage. Maybe she's worried about being caught by the police as an underage drinker. The fact she ran is interesting.
I don't know if it was something from the stepdad or dad at the house where their guy friend was, where she jumped out the window, but why didn't she leave out the door? If he was telling them to leave, I'm sure that they could have used the door instead of the window. I had seen some people talking online and on Reddit especially about if she had jumped out the window and then laid on the ground for any significant amount of time, what were her friends and any other adults in the household doing? The adults maybe just didn't see it, but her friends noted that she was out there on the ground for a while. So why didn't they check on her? Like, why didn't they call somebody, especially since she just got up and disappeared? That would be a pretty big deal that she had laid on the ground for a while.
If you're not getting up, that usually means it's serious. Yeah, nobody seemed to call an tease or nothing we read said anybody went out and checked on her. And then she just got up and ran off. She was with her cousin, and they got separated at some point.
That was after she jumped out the window and she laid down for a while, or she stayed on the ground for a while. And her cousin came out, and they were together for a period of time. And then from what I read from the cousin, that Naveah just took off, and then the cousin couldn't find her. Nobody's reported anything besides the one couple saying that their window was broken, as if someone was trying to find shelter, but there were no other reports of people having anyone or any signs of someone staying in their garages or sheds or anything like that around that could have been seeking shelter. That also seems weird if it was her and maybe someone in their car scared her off, or maybe she could have thought she saw the police or something that made her run from the house to not get in trouble. But it does seem weird to knock on their door and be like talking to them and then run off, but still try to get into their garage, unless that happened first and then she went to them to try to see if they would help her, but not sticking around the area. Something has to have either scared her off, or something was going on with the head injury and her bipolar.
I think of the same as Maura Murray hit her head on the glass.
Mm-hmm.
Although Butch Atwood says she wasn't bleeding, that head injury. And the fact that also her mom said that she may have gotten COVID while she was out there in the cold would make the situation even worse.
if she did have COVID, which starts out feeling like a head cold. You feel gross. At least when I had COVID, it started out feeling like a cold, and then it just felt super gross, like super clogged up in your head. And I had a headache that lasted, felt like 4 days. And if she was dealing with any of that, in addition to whatever drinking may have been going on after parties to the first party where we know she was drinking, then that could have made her feel even worse. And then the falling out the window, which could have also, or jumping out the window, could have knocked the wind out of her. And then that's why she would be laying on the ground for so long trying to catch her breath. There are so many different possibilities that of different things that can happen when you jump out a window. So there's no way to really narrow it down and be like, okay, she had a head injury or whatever thing happened to her, unless she's found at some point.
Yep, or some new clue. I think we've discussed a bunch of theories. Are we about that point to move on to theories?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to start? So what are your theories?
My main theory for both Jeremy and Naveah is trafficking or kidnapping situation. I think that could be why she ran from the house where people were trying to help her, because if a car pulled up next to her when she was running and she was after she got separated from her cousin and they were trying to get her to get in the car or something that she wasn't comfortable with, that could have been when she ran up to the house and tried to get help, but then she maybe saw the car come around the corner or saw something that then spooked her and she ran off again, and then maybe that person got what they wanted. And beyond that, even if she was just out late at night and after the interaction with the couple that saw her, if even after that somebody pulled over and was super nice, tried to offer her a ride home or something, and she did get in a car for whatever reason, then they took her to do whatever they wanted. And just evidence for that is the repeated human trafficking issues that we found in Minnesota, which the US as a whole, Minnesota is very low on the list for how many instances of human trafficking there are, but there have still been like a pretty significant number of arrests and victims saved from Minnesota, and the fact that 2 people in Bemidji were arrested.
And it's not a big town.
Yeah. And and then I also like, even though they arrest these people who were involved, that doesn't mean that they arrested anyone and everyone who could have been involved. They maybe got like the 2 people that responded to the ad or what they posted to try to get people to come in their sting operation, but that doesn't mean that everyone who is part of a trafficking ring would show up to that. So it makes me wonder if there's other people still left over, because there are still cases. There was one that was earlier this year in Bemidji where a group of men abducted an 11-year-old and took her to a like abandoned house, it sounded like, and then had their way with her. So it's not a very nice town. It's a small town, and from what I've read, at least, like, it's okay during the day, but at night you have to be more careful. So I definitely feel like there was some sort of involvement by other people, most likely kidnapping or trafficking. I could see for Naveah maybe the hypothermia theory, saying that she just wandered off and died in the cold. But I definitely think that if that is what had happened, that we would have found more evidence of that by now. And since they have it, and since Jeremy and Naveah's families have intertwined in their searches for clues for both of their kids, because they were both last seen in Bemidji, that at least one of these massive searches would have turned something up for either case if they were going to be found in that area. With Jeremy, since the dogs lost his scent just a few blocks away, that also seems to point to him getting in a car or getting in some sort of vehicle, because otherwise I feel like the dogs would have been able to tell where he was, because the police were out investigating, doing a ground search by 9 a.m. the next morning when his family called the cops to report him missing, so there wasn't as much of a delay as there was in Naveah's. So I feel like that gives them even more, I don't know what the best word is, but it makes it like even easier to find the person because it's within the first 24 hours of them going missing, which is supposed to be like the most likely time period for them to be found. And the fact that they were so on top of it and they still couldn't find anything feels like intentional by a third party.
Yep, and the dogs sent last for a couple of days at least. I think in the thing we saw in Mormon Road was like about 3 days, but this is like I said the next morning. I think we agree on this one that we have Jeremy. The fact that the dogs lost their scent makes you think somebody got in the car, and it just everything seems to point to some sort of foul play. Saw these vulnerable young kids outside and took advantage of the situation. The one we didn't talk about was the Line 3, the pipeline, which kind of ties into the trafficking thing.
Yeah, the Enbridge Line 3 pipeline, which is an oil pipeline that goes from up in Canada all the way down through.
Canada's oil sands region to Lake Superior's western tip, near Minnesota-Wisconsin border. And there's a lot of connection with the oil workers and trafficking to the point where they were putting together a fund to help people that got trafficked, like in advance, which means they know it's an issue. And so you got this going on top of everything else. And these native kids, which police and the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the FBI and local police muddy it all up, make it difficult to investigate. Although local police here seem to be on top of it. They just, I think, maybe waited too long in Naveah's case. But they have that whole pipeline thing adding to the whole mix and more importantly to the traffic side of it.
In Minnesota, there were lots of reports of harassment from pipeline workers to women, and that there was sex trafficking training that the pipeline workers have to go through because it is such a prevalent problem. And when we talked earlier about the sting operation in June of 2021 that was in Bemidji with the Michael Eichstadt and Quint Ironecklace both being from Bemidji, there were 6 men total arrested that were mostly from around Minnesota, and 2 of those 6 were people working on the Enbridge Line 3 oil pipeline, and they were fired immediately after their arrest, which was good, but there were still a lot of issues with the pipeline workers, and this was one of the issues that was brought up when they were talking about if the pipeline was going to be approved by the state, was the concern for human trafficking and increase in like sex violence and all of that by having so many new workers basically that get moved into the area. So knowing that was a thing that could be happening, and then them setting up money that would help pay for hotel rooms and other things for people who were reporting this harassment, and setting up for support for people who had been trafficked, and just general issues with the workers working on the pipeline. Having money approved to support victims of it was
like paying off in advance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is an interesting comment right here. The company built along a new route that avoids the reservation of the Leech Lake Band of the Ojibwe, which opposed locating the new line across its land. Ojibwe actually is the tribe that Naveah is from. She spoke fluent of Ojibwe. So another tie-in right there, that they're not letting them take the pipeline across their land, but obviously they saw it as a problem.
It definitely was an issue. There were some people even that worked for the pipeline or worked for other oil pipelines in the area and said that most of the workforce was great and treated everybody like family, but that some of the workers would not be the best people, and that there's a lot of the workers that are causing the problems wouldn't necessarily be like held accountable by the other workers that were there. It was just every man for themselves. And then just through reading about other oil pipelines too, it sounds like this is something the like human trafficking and other violence follows pretty much all of the oil pipelines that get approved, whether it's just because you have to move a whole bunch of people into a small area or if it's because that's the easiest way. Like if you're involved in human trafficking, that'd be a very easy way to travel to new states and all over the country collecting victims.
And they're temporary workers. It makes it harder to connect them back to the crime. You gotta prove that they were there at the same time makes it more difficult. And the fact that they're a bunch of men living in basically North Dakota, and they build these cities where they live, and they're away from everything for months until they finish the job, and then they go back to their homes. It just lends itself to that environment. Not that I'm justifying it.
And I would say it is still important to note it's not all pipeline workers. There are a few bad apples with ill intentions that screw it up for everybody. I think it's definitely with Naveah and Jermaine that they were trafficked or kidnapped. Somebody else was involved in their disappearances. I have no idea what happened to Jermaine if that's not what happened, because he definitely at least got in someone's car. But where he ended up after that, I have no idea. And with Naveah, she's
going along the road early morning, so
if there is any updated information after the March 30th search, we can update everyone on what they maybe found out. And I guess if you're in Minnesota, if you're in the Minnesota area of Bemidji or feel like making a drive and you want to go be a part of the search on March 30th for Jeremy Jourdain, can look that up. And I know that they have a sign up sheet for volunteers to go look for him, and that it's divided up into 2 or 3 different day parts. So there's a morning slot, a midday slot, and an afternoon.
Anyone who has information about Naveah's case should contact the Bemidji Police Department at 218-333-9111, or you can get on Minnesota Crime Stoppers and leave a tip. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode. In our next episode, we'll be covering the case of Ramona Brown, who disappeared after a strange fire at her parents' residence. Join us then, and thanks for listening.